Hello and welcome to the session on Decoding the New National Education Policy, Part 1. All the information presented in the slide is taken from the National Education Policy 2020 as released by the Ministry of Human Resources Development. So let us begin. Before we discuss about the new Education Policy 2020, let us look at the policies which came before this one. The first policy on education post-independence was released in 1968 on the recommendations of Kothari Commission, which called for radical restructuring. Modernization of education system was the need of the hour, and this policy very well met that. With this policy in place, many higher educational institutions were set up across the country. The next policy on education was introduced in 1986 and modified in 1992. The policy laid emphasis on removal of disparity and equal educational opportunities for all. It called for child-centered approach and laid emphasis on girl education. National Education Policy 2020 is released after 34 years based on the report of ex-ISRO Chief Dr. Kasturi Rangan. The new Education Policy 2020 is founded on the 5 guiding pillars of access, equity, quality, affordability, and accountability. We live in a dynamic, ever-changing, and a challenging world. Several studies and research have shown that jobs that exist today will not exist in 15 to 20 years from now. The skill sets required will be very, very different. In such a scenario, education should not be about rote learning of the concepts, but developing 21st century skills in students to equip them to be competent, mindful, and resilient. It will prepare our youth to meet the diverse national and global challenges of the present and the future. Now let's see what principles this policy is based on. Number 1, the Global Education Development Agenda reflected in the Goal 4 of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development adopted by India in 2015 seeks to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all by 2030. The purpose of the education system is to develop good human beings capable of rational thought and action, possessing compassion and empathy, courage and resilience, scientific temper and creative imagination, with sound ethical moorings and values. It aims at producing engaged, productive, and contributing citizens for building an equitable, inclusive, and plural society as envisaged by our Constitution. A light but tight regulatory framework to ensure integrity, transparency, and resource efficiency of the educational system through audit and public disclosure, while encouraging innovation and out-of-the-box ideas through autonomy, good governance, and empowerment. Let us now also understand the vision of this policy. This national education policy envisions an education system rooted in Indian ethos that contributes directly to transforming India, that is Bharat, sustainably into an equitable and vibrant knowledge society by providing high quality education to all and thereby making India a global knowledge superpower. The policy envisages that the curriculum and the pedagogy of our institutions must develop among students a deep sense of respect towards fundamental duties and constitutional values, bonding with one's country, and a conscious awareness of one's roles and responsibilities in a changing world. The vision of the policy is to instill among the learners a deep-rooted pride in being Indian, not only in thought, but also in spirit, intellect, and deeds, as well as to develop knowledge, skills, values, and dispositions that support responsible commitment to human rights, sustainable development, and living and global well-being, thereby reflecting a truly global citizen. Now let us see what has changed with the new education policy 2020. The first change that is very obvious to our eyes is the change in the academic structure. The academic structure followed in India until now was 10 plus 2, that is 10 years of school education and 2 years of secondary education. Education below the age of 6 was not considered as a part of the school education. The new education policy envisages that the extant 10 plus 2 structure in school education will be modified with a new pedagogical and curricular restructuring of 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 covering ages 3 to 18. The curricular and the pedagogical structure and the curricular framework for school education will therefore be guided by a 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 design consisting of the foundational stage in two parts, that is 3 years of Anganwadi or preschool plus 2 years in primary school in grades 1 and 2, both together covering ages 3 to 8. Preparatory stage, grades 3 to 5, covering ages 8 to 11. Middle stage, grades 6 to 8, covering ages 11 to 14. And secondary stage, grades 9 to 12 in two phases, that is 9 and 10 in the first and 11 and 12 in the second, covering ages 14 to 18. NEP 2020 looks at school and higher education as a single organic continuum and is rooted in the Indian ethos and constitutional values with emphasis on imbibing of 21st century skills. The policy aims and aspires to universalize the pre-primary education and provides special emphasis on the attainment of the foundational literacy and numeracy in primary school and beyond for all by 2025. It recommends plethora of reforms at all levels of school education, which seeks to ensure quality of schools, transform the curriculum, including pedagogy, reform the current exams and assessment system, strengthen teacher training, and restructure the education regulatory framework. Let's now discuss in detail about each stage in the 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 design. Let us first begin with foundational stage. A national curricular and pedagogical framework for early childhood care and education for children up to the age of 8 will be developed by NCERT in two parts. That is, a sub-framework of 0 to 3-year-olds and a sub-framework for 3 to 8-year-olds. It will be based on the indigenous toys and games, puppetry, art, stories, indigenous poetry songs, physical, motor and cognitive development, which means the sub-framework of 0 to 3-year-olds will primarily be the guidelines for parents to educate them about the importance of brain development and physical development in the early years of a child's life. Sub-framework 2 for 3 to 8-year-olds or the foundational stage will consist of 5 years of flexible, multi-level, play activity-based learning and the curriculum and the pedagogy. It will be based on latest research, international and national best practices. Sub-Framework 2 will become the basis for the implementation of National Mission for Foundation Literacy and Numeracy. NCERT will prepare model playbooks and other teaching and learning materials for the foundational stage, which includes pedagogy, curriculum and classroom material, teacher training, monitoring and field support, assessments. Learning outcomes will be defined for the foundational stage. To ensure that all students are school ready, an interim 3-month play-based school preparation module for all grade 1 students consisting of activities and workbooks around the learning of alphabets, sounds, words, colors, shapes, and numbers, and involving collaborations with peers and parents will be developed by NCERT and SCERTs. Look at the preparatory stage, which includes children in the age group of 8 to 11 in grades 3 to 5. The learning in the preparatory class shall be based primarily on play-based learning with a focus on developing cognitive, affective, and psychomotor abilities in early literacy and numeracy. The preparatory stage will comprise 3 years of education building on the play, discovery, and activity-based pedagogical and curricular style of the foundational stage. It will also begin to incorporate some light textbooks as well as aspects of more formal but interactive classroom learning in order to lay a solid groundwork across subjects, including reading, writing, speaking, physical education, art, languages, science, and mathematics. After the preparatory stage is the middle stage of children in the age group of 11 to 14 years in the grade 6 to 8. The middle stage will comprise 3 years of education, building on the pedagogical and curricular style of the preparatory stage, also the introduction of subject teachers for learning and discussion of the more abstract concepts in each subject that students will be ready for at this stage across the sciences, mathematics, arts, social sciences, and humanities. Experiential learning within each subject and exploration of relations among different subjects will be encouraged and emphasized despite the introduction of more specialized subjects and subject teachers. This is the final stage of a child's school education, that is the secondary stage of children in the age of 14 to 18 and grades 9 to 12. The secondary stage will comprise of 4 years of multidisciplinary study building on the subject-oriented pedagogical and curricular style of the middle stage, but with greater depth, greater critical thinking, greater attention to life aspirations, greater flexibility, and students' choice of subjects. There will be no hard separation in subject streams such as art, science, and commerce. Students will have greater flexibility to choose subjects across the streams. That means the child can choose mathematics from the science stream and also choose economics from the humanities stream. Well, this brings us to the end of discussion of part 1 on NEP 2020. Here in part 1, we had discussed about the principle, vision, and the new academic structure for schools which will have to be followed now. In part 2 of the presentation, we shall discuss about the implementations of NEP in schools, and in part 3, we shall discuss about the assessment procedure and the role of teachers in making the NEP successful. Thank you and have a great day.